If someone asked me where I grew up, I would say Chicago's Northwest Side. If they knew the area well, the next question was also where. My answer was always Riis Park. Riis Park defined more than where I lived. In many ways, it defined who I am, an athletic, nature lover, and artist. This was no accident. Named after Jacob A. Riis, a Danish immigrant, photographer, journalist, and activist, Riis experienced firsthand the plight of the working class poor, many of them immigrants like himself. He wrote and photographed how people lived in the tenements of New York, first as a reporter, and then in books including How the Other Half Lives, published in 1890. These photos surrounding the park dedication monument near the southwest corner were taken in 1940 and 2017. The plaque reads, "Friend of children, defender of the poor and suffering, champion of American ideals," and quotes Theodore Roosevelt. If I were asked to name a man who came nearest the ideal American citizen, I should name Jacob A. Riis. Riis's book captured for the country the plight of the inner city poor. He became an advocate for breathing space in the dense urban working class neighborhoods. His speech in 1898 at Chicago's Hull House, shown here, helped local reformers advocate for city playgrounds like the one in Riis Park, shown with my two siblings on the monkey bars. By 1916, when Riis Park was created, this movement had gained momentum nationally. This was also the year my grandfather, Vartan Poloyan, came through Ellis Island at the age of 16, seeking refuge from the Armenian genocide. With the aid of a strong Armenian church community, he settled into an apartment a block south of Riis Park. Although never reaching the population levels experienced by Riis, the Belmont-Cragen neighborhood was growing with its immigrant population of Swedes, German, Irish, Italian, Polish, and Armenians. By 1930, the neighborhood population had reached 60,000, one-third of which were foreign-born. This photo shows a large gathering at Riis Park. Mostly undeveloped until 1928, a ski jump and golf course were constructed on the 56-acre park. Also that year, architect Walter Allschlager was commissioned to design the Georgian Revival-style fieldhouse that stands at the southeast entrance of the park, placed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1995. These photos, taken in the late 1930s, show my grandfather, my grandmother, my dad, aunt, and various friends and relatives picnicking on the west side of the park. By 1934, Works Progress Administration funding was designated to make improvements to this side of the park, and it was placed under the jurisdiction of the Chicago Park District. The east side of the park was fully developed by this time, and a 1936 survey of Chicago parks indicate use of the pool, track, tennis court, and baseball diamonds. Public standards for Chicago park space was strategically planned and fully realized, inspired by legislation in New York that Riis helped to spur. I spent summers going to the pool and I became a swimmer. I attended the arts and crafts program there and became a graphic designer. My sister spent her time there in the drama department and ended up in theater management. My brothers played baseball there. This designation of use long ago really did shape who people are today. These photos show the lagoon in 2017 and with my siblings in 1963. By 1936, the 9-hole golf course was closed to make way for landscape architect Alfred Caldwell's design for the west side of the park. It included shady picnic areas, a meadow, a stone-lined lagoon, and various trees and plants. Locals say his plan for the lagoon was delayed when the U.S. entered World War II and the ski jump was disassembled for its metal. The 3 lots a block north of the park that my grandfather had purchased for his sons to build their houses on were used as victory gardens. My dad and uncle did build their houses there after the war. This aerial view of the park was taken in 1939. It is difficult to see the hill at the center, a remnant from a glacial ridge at the edge of Lake Chicago, which divided the two sides. The west side was intended to provide reflective natural space, and the east side to provide a place for athletics and activities. The park and neighborhood remained relatively unchanged for the years after the lagoon was built in the early 1940s. Hall Printing, which opened a 17-acre plant nearby, continued to employ skilled European tradesmen, but gradually things began to change. The plant closed its doors in 1985. The demographics began to reflect the lower income. This photo shows a paletas de hielo, or frozen fruit bar I purchased from a vendor at the park. Not something I would find in earlier decades there. The neighborhood's Hispanic population grew from 3,000 in 1980 to over 16,000 in 1990. By 2017, 77% of the neighborhood was Hispanic. The sign at the northwest entrance of the park says welcome in 6 languages, leading with Spanish. At its core, it's still a neighborhood of immigrants, as it always has been, even though that means Hispanic immigrants instead of Irish, Polish, etc. Over 37% of the population is foreign-born. 23% do not speak English. Riis Park remains the center of the immigrant experience, hosting, among other events, Festival Cubano, named the #1 Hispanic festival in the Midwest by Univision Radio, with Roomba parades, hand-rolled cigars, and 2 live stages of Hispanic music. I can only hope Riis Park holds equally rewarding experiences for this new generation. I believe it does, and Riis would approve. Plans are in the works to resurface the track and tennis courts. There are soccer fields and a regulation ice rink. The park was clean and very well maintained. All the cement water fountains were running. The cold water just tastes better out of them than a metal box. It's hard to give up having Riis Park at the end of your block. My parents proposed moving in the 1980s, and my 2 siblings said they would get an apartment, so we stayed. I see Facebook references showing friends with their arms around each other and captions like, "My Riis Park brother." I even attended a Riis Park reunion in 2016, even though I haven't lived there. I grew up with the youngest of 6 in a working-class family. There wasn't a lot of personal space. As kids, we went sledding, climbed trees, caught frogs, and played on the playground. In later years, we spent days walking through the natural side of the park. We've all taken our own kids there. Through all the stages of life, it was everything Jacob Riis meant it to be. Still